Hey.
Oi!
I'm here to talk about Lego.
You're all right, keep your hair on, Grandad.
Hey, whoa, I'm 29 for Christ's sakes.
Lego Star Wars,
The most disappointing thing since my son.
a game that to the uncultured might seem like cute fun, but watch those wrist rockets because this little game represents quite a legacy.
Episode 1 all the way through to episode 9, we knew we had to take it further than we'd ever been.
It might sound banana land right now, but let me explain why something like this could encapsulate more nostalgia than a VH1 episode of I Love the 2000s. And also why it might not be the slam dunk Space Jam everyone was hoping for.
And even worse, it's pretty boring.
I have mixed feelings about this game. I have mixed feelings about the OG complete Saga game. I have mixed feelings about Star Wars, both past and especially present. But that doesn't mean these topics don't merit a discussion.
Let the past die. Kill it.
That's so dumb. I mean, why?
An important discussion, in fact.
Young Skywalker.
One about nostalgia and where it's satisfying
You're back from the original game.
and where it hurts.
You know, and they ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would know.
There's just so much to talk about here. How about that it's another Star Wars product in a sea of Star Wars products? Or the reminder that there's been dozens of Lego games since the first one, some of them being fantastic and some of them being quite strange.
Can't wait until Lego Birth of a Nation or Lego Triumph of the Will. Until then...
And the many bugs and glitches that either made the game worse or significantly better.
Combo them. A trick they're calling child flight.
I'm here for these mixed feelings, to understand them if I can, because right now this thesis is about as J.J. Abrams as it gets.
And I often am like, dude, today I'm out. I got nothing, So there's that.
We'll even put our big boy pants on and reference some real psychology.
Well, I'm a nostalgia critic guy, remember? It's so you.
Peter Pan.
Join me as I boldly journey deep into the heart of Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga.
He's the main character in Star Wars. He kissed his sister.
This is where the fun begins.
I need someone to show me my place in this.
Before we get going,
Does anyone want to get out?
I'm not here to review the game. But it's hard to go into nostalgia territory without being honest about my feelings for Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. There's plenty of critiques out there, and I agree with pretty much all of them if that makes any sense.
That doesn't make sense.
The people who love the game, I can see why, and the people who are disappointed all have valid reasons. So again, this ain't a critique, everything wrong with, why it failed, autopsy, love fest, or hate fest. I prefer the phrase psychological analysis. Yeah, so it's like a review, I guess. I don't know. Maybe an angry review because I just can't beat this shooting game. Alright, emotions might be high right now, and we've orbited cringe so much that we might as well colonize its moon.
That's no moon. It's a space station.
But I know I'm not alone in this frustrating planet of thinking that something with the Star Wars name on it would bring me just a little joy in my life and remind me of the good old days. Those good old days for me are why I'm here.
You can't repeat the past.
Can't repeat the past.
No.
Why, of course you can. Of course you can.
See, I grew up in the prequel era. I was too young to understand why people love these movies so much when I saw the first two movies growing up. My earliest memory relating to Star Wars being my dad driving and saying "punch it" before getting onto the highway, and making me hit a random button before he put his foot in the gas. I genuinely thought this was hyperdrive for far too long. Either way, they're just movies to youngling me, until something finally hit me while seeing the third on opening night. And it hit me like a first religious experience. Long story short, the movie was alright.
I don't believe what I'm hearing.
Chill, I said alright. Alright means good.
You're breaking my heart.
Oh my god, fine. Long story short, the movie was the greatest cinematic experience of my life because the lightsaber duels with everyone, and I mean everyone,
Young, old, rich, poor, chingy.
happening in the lobby when the movie ended taught me much more about why people love this franchise more than any teacher ever could.
You're a
A teacher?
Part-time.
It was then I realized that for a lot of people, this really isn't about the movies. Or I guess now the shows too. It's about the toys they grew up with, the Halloween costumes as a kid, the Legos. And for myself...
Prepare for the sequel to the best-selling Star Wars game of all time. Fight as a Jedi. Fight in space. Fight the battles.
This was my Star Wars. Hours upon hours of this, and this. Meaning I didn't care if this broke canon, because it meant I'd be able to go sicko mode with the little green puppet on Kashyyyk.
Wars not make one great.
You see, my mom watched the news in the early 2000s, when video games apparently made kids violent.
Do video games make teens and young adults violent in reality?
So GTA and being cool was off the table, and instead of bumping the radio tunes of Los Santos, I was humming the theme to Traverse Town in the back of the class, still able to enjoy the slightly more family-friendly open worlds of Jak 2 and Sly Cooper than most of my friends who'd moved on to something like Halo. So obviously, when I was in middle school, I think, LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga came around, and I didn't have to be convinced that it was more than just a kid's game. It didn't matter who it was primarily marketed towards, these could still be fun games to me. Safe to say, I was in on LEGO Star Wars, despite getting older and older. Even back then, these games reminded me of what made LEGO so fun as a kid. The collecting, the mixing and matching, and the chaos you get when you're bored, or the silly charm. Something about it just felt unique to a toy maker's game.
Darth 3PO?
To me, it's not, and it's never really been about the challenge of the game, but the collectathon and the wacky fun you can create. Case in point, it's strange how few people talk about how hilarious it was watching these characters fight outside the cantina or the diner, when for me, that was like one of my only drives for unlocking them. It's a small, subtle thing that made these games really unique.
They come back because of the subtleties, the details.
Fast forward over 10 years later, and I was fully ready to embrace this new game. And I knew what I was buying. I understood that there would be next to no challenge at all, and that I would have to be ready to explain myself when my wife walks into the room. So in spite of all that, it's pretty safe to say that I wanted to love this as a nostalgia trip from start to finish. Only to my unrelenting disappointment, when I finished the last level of the game, I felt pretty disappointed. Not to get too much into detail, but I think the thing that bothered me the most was the Kyber brick system. For example, right at the start of the game, you were prompted with the option to get an upgrade to run faster, which I immediately turned off. Why would I want to run faster, fast forwarding through the open world? I thought this was going to be the best part of the game. However, an hour later, I understood the real problem with this. If you find Kyber bricks useless, which they kind of are, then it destroys a massive part of the reward system, as most of the rewards for solving the puzzles are these hollow items. And with that, the flaw's floodgates were officially opened. Money became useless to me, studs became useless to me, because the only thing I wanted was more characters, and they are insanely cheap. That and the novelty of walking around a newly purchased Death Star wore off in about 5 minutes. But from there I thought, hey, there must be loads of Easter eggs to find or hidden rooms. Yet, after I was nearly certain doing this absurdly time-consuming task would lead to something other than a Kyber brick, only to have it lead to another Kyber brick, I was on my way out. The final nail hovering over the coffin was looking up what 100%ing the game gets you, and I considered uninstalling. Maybe the hype had gotten the best of me yet again.
Don't be so gullible, McFly.
Except I saw loads of people loving this game and the reviews were overwhelmingly positive. There must be some kind of way I could enjoy this too, right? Like the way that people rewatch movies, Pacific Rim, with their brain off and then their opinion flips, or something like that. Well, that didn't work either.
Liar!
It made me feel old, like the charm of LEGO Star Wars had gotten away from me. The stuff midlife crises are made of.
Oh dear, I think I know what this is. You see, Stan, as you get older, things that you used to like start looking and sounding like shit.
Oh, you don't get that South Park reference? Well, I'm sure the Chewbacca defense went right over your head as well.
What's a Chewbacca defense? I don't know. That's what Cochran used in the O.J. Simpson trial. God damn, I hate that Cochran guy.
Except even then, despite all of those feelings, I didn't want to give up. I took to the only sources I know well to explain how I should feel, and when those answers failed me as well, I decided to do the mature thing and understand nostalgia a bit better by reading what leading experts in psychology have to say about this mysterious phenomenon.
Page turners, they were not.
So, nostalgia, literally translating to homecoming despair. It's a bittersweet longing to return to something in the past. And despite being a fairly common emotion, its biological purposes are quite complicated and are disputed among today's psychologists. As a topic, most of the research comes from Southampton University, where different experiments were run to try to understand this phenomenon. For example, in 2 studies with a few dozen students each, researchers found that making people feel lonely or sad made them much more likely to feel nostalgic, more so than people who felt happy or chill, even if they weren't asked about their memories. Now, obviously, these conclusions are pretty broad, but the results led the researchers to propose that nostalgia exists to help deal with negative emotions. They theorized that nostalgia could be used as a light coping mechanism, used to form social bonds, improve self-esteem, or to improve one's mood. To test this hypothesis, they asked half the participants to think about something nostalgic from their past, and the other half to think about something ordinary they did about a week ago. And then they administered surveys. Interestingly enough, their results tended to show that people who felt nostalgic had improved moods and self-esteem. They also felt less anxiety about their relationships, so hey, case closed? Well, not quite. The people in this study didn't report feeling sad or lonely, so the researchers wanted to explore the idea that nostalgia would be used to protect someone from having their day ruined, even when you think about sad things, like, say, death. Your own death. I'm not kidding, they had subjects contemplate their own eventual ending. And once again, the results were in favor of their theory. In the experiment, more than 50 people wrote about their own death, and then half of those people thought about something nostalgic, capping the study off with completing a word completion task. This is where a subject is given the first couple of letters of a word, and then they're asked to complete it. Meaning, if you're given the letters like C-O-F, you could finish it by saying coffin or coffee. The people who thought about dying but didn't get nostalgic answered much more morbid words, while the nostalgic crew tended to give more neutral answers. However, another study showed that nostalgia is also something to be careful of. The famous rose-tinted glasses phrase was revealed when people were asked to rate TV shows from different decades. As you might have guessed, most people generally said that shows of their past are better than shows today, even when they're reminded of current shows they like just as much or even more. And regardless of age, subjects also tended to rate the movies from the year that they graduated high school better than any other movies before or after that. All in all, these studies aren't without their debates. And certainly you could argue that older people or children experience nostalgia substantially differently, but for me the conclusions were simple. Memory plays a massive role in perspective. Take what should have been yet another celebrity public meltdown, but instead dominated entertainment news for weeks. People don't just have an emotional reaction to this because it's a mentally ill celebrity and it's outrageous, but because it's in West Philadelphia, born and raised. The same could be said for the obsession with the trial of Amber Heard and
Captain Jack Sparrow.
The key moments we grow up with are powerfully tinted glasses that can get in the way of living in the present, which ultimately means that it's possible I was too harsh with LEGO Star Wars.
In your heart, you begin to understand.
And after some time away from the cringy TikTok dancing minifigures, I decided to return.
We started playing a little game. And now, we're all gonna sit down. We're gonna...
So enjoy it! Stop crying!
And I'm glad I gave it a second chance.
And I've never been so happy to be proven wrong.
I found myself still tormented that a lot of the things I hoped would be in the game were not, and I was definitely a bit bored at times, but reconciliation and more came from when I began to notice things that I'd either completely overlooked or minimized as momentary chuckles in my first playthrough. The biggest turnaround for me was how much this game had matured since the complete saga.
I have a particular set of skills that will come in handy here.
I originally thought a few of these quests and level titles were just a couple of silly references, only to discover that actually most of them are.
Very impressive.
I'd hoped you would be pleased.
And the amount of meme references and hidden Easter eggs in the game went far beyond what I had given credit for earlier. So it was happening.
I felt life in me again.
My time with LEGO Star Wars started to become more satisfying when I took a step back and thought about how much TT Games was able to pack into this big project. How many of the details they obsessed over and... Oh, crunch. Yikes. Well, okay, that's terrible. In my opinion, it's a shame too, because if the management team had them focus on the less expansive open world type stuff and instead on the goofy character creator or, the simplicity, I think they could have really shaved down the amount of overwork that went into this game. Regardless,
Shit, I'm back. All right, baby.
I can't hate LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. It might still not be the game for me overall, but I'm happy with what I ended up finding instead. One day I'll have an annoying kid of my own, and they'll probably absolutely love LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. Just like I did the original. Maybe not for the same reasons, but...
In your heart, you begin to understand. There is no going back.
And maybe they'll discover something subtle.
The subtlety.
The same way I discovered details I loved about the first one. It's a big game, there's bound to be something. It'll be their own experience with Star Wars. And, like me lightsaber dueling a father of four like it was the fate of the universe in front of the popcorn stand, I hope that they understand what Star Wars means in that moment too. Or they'll get bored and beg me to buy them GTA 6 if it ever comes out.
Time is a flat circle.
I don't know, man.
Like a star, you can't stop my shine. I'm loving clouds hitting my head.